Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Jar of Marble dwellers and Jar of Marble curious. My name is Linda and this is Jar of Marbles. And I'm Bob. That's right, you sure are. Well, Bob and I are really glad that you're here with us. So sit down, relax, and just, we just can have a nice little relaxing time together, which I always enjoy. So do I. I know, Bob. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about deja vu. Imagine this, you're out shopping, you're going about your day, and all of a sudden you're hit with a sure sense of certainty that you've lived this moment before. There have been moments in my life, and if I've been really lucky to be with someone to be able to say to them, wait, stop, I've been here, and yet I have never been here. Once when I was 10 years old, we were in Scotland for 3 months on holiday. We'd travelled down to England from Scotland by car in a Mark II Zephyr. Mum and Dad, my grandmother and my 3 siblings. So there we are driving down in England, and there were the plan for this particular day was we were looking for an aunt's place that my parents had never been to before, and I certainly hadn't. I'd been born and was being raised in New Zealand. Suddenly I knew where I was. We were driving down a highway, 3 lanes, a huge grassed medium strip in the middle and 3 lanes on the other side. And I pointed to a house and I said, that's the house. And it was right on the other side of the motorway. Not only was that right, I knew how the house was set up. I recall I was talking really fast. I knew where her furniture was, the design of her lounge, what rooms led where, what her kitchen looked like, where her windows were in the back of the house, her views. Like, creepy. Not at all, Bob. It felt so natural, and being only 10 years old, I didn't really question that, but I never forgot. I also remember my parents' looks at me. I remember my father and my mother, their typical sort of things to me whenever I came out with anything that was outside of, the norm. There's something wrong with you. You're not right in the head. So they were really encouraging.
No, they weren't.
So yes, deja vu, I knew that house. I knew it. I had never been to England in my life, and yet there you go. That all felt very familiar, but it felt like I had almost predicted it. Most of us will have experienced or heard of the phenomenon. I looked into it and found some surprising considerations. Deja vu is a French term meaning already seen.
Ooh, see, that's a bit,
Hold on, Bob. Open up your mind.
Okay.
So, it is a term that describes an uncanny feeling of already having lived an experience that you find yourself in, or that an experience is incredibly familiar. It comes over you so gently and sometimes so powerfully, and you don't know why you feel that way because you shouldn't. It doesn't fit where you find yourself. When studies have been attempted to monitor it, it is difficult because in nature they happen suddenly and randomly. So therefore, it is impossible to know really how many people have experienced deja vu. By some estimates, some say around 30% of people have experienced deja vu, and in other estimates, the range could be higher, upwards towards 80%. Apparently, it can first occur when we are very young, between the ages of 5 and 10, and also between the ages of early adulthood from 15 to 25. My oldest daughter lives with a lot of deja vu. Said her wedding day, different places that she's been with her husband, music that is playing can trigger this sense of knowing. She said she was on holiday and heard 40s styled music, turned to her husband without batting an eye and said, "This was my era." Deja vu seems to cover the sense of a past life, so that fell neatly into that, category. Her husband, as she says, seems to be the beacon for her deja vu experiences. She added that different people seem to trigger deja vu. She is a very intuitive woman, and none of this is actually particularly surprising to me.
I feel like I was destined to be here.
Me too, Bob. My other daughter, when she was around 5 years old, one day, as we were out walking, holding hands and the sea was in clear view, she suddenly said, "I'm glad I chose you again to be my mummy."
Did she really?
Yeah. And she went on to say that we had come on a big ship from England and my name was Rachel when I was her other mummy. And she had me as her mother the last 3 times. The sincerity and her obvious seriousness was both unexpected and interesting. That was basically it. She has no memory of the conversation, which is a bit unfortunate. I, however, will never forget it. Some spiritual explanations believe that deja vu occurs to show you that you're on the right path. The use of deja vu in the 1999 film The Matrix, Neo, a protagonist computer hacker, learns that the world is a computer simulation, the result of an elaborate cyber intelligence. In one scene, Neo sees a black cat perfectly replicating twitches twice down a hallway and refers to it as deja vu. It is later described or explained as a glitch in the Matrix. There are other theories that are based in science.
Oh ho ho, I'm gonna like this.
I know, you love your science.
Yes, I do.
Some researching scientists have noted that in the cases of experienced deja vu, may be related to how memories are made and stored in the brain, which largely occurs in the temporal lobes where facts, experiences are stored. There seems, through these particular studies, that it happens with people who have epilepsy, that they report experiencing deja vu a lot and usually just before an epileptic event or seizure. It happens too frequently that it can function as a warning sign. But of course, not everyone that experiences deja vu also experiences epilepsy.
Thought it was all wrapped up neatly there.
No, Bob, not quite. So briefly, the change of electricity in the brain where deja vu is being experienced is also classed as short in the circuits in our brain, which can take many forms such as neurons pertaining to recognition and familiarity firing mistakenly, leading the brain to mistake the present for the past. I actually enjoy when I have those small moments of confusion. It makes me feel like I'm a time traveller. I sometimes get the feeling of deja vu in the most random moments. Sometimes when I'm having a good time, laughing, having fun, it just sort of hits my brain. I have heard myself say, haven't I done this before? I mean, I really want to believe that, but I have had experiences that are just way too random. Others' deja vu experiences tends to happen in the form of dreams. They'll have a dream, and then much later it will then happen in their life. They don't recognise its importance while they're dreaming, but definitely remember it and dreaming it after it happens. A woman I spoke to said once she was at a birthday party near a beach in a spot she had never been, and there were a few people she had never met. She got this feeling over her that felt like deja vu. I didn't say I felt it out loud, she said. However, one of the girls she'd just met said, I feel like I'm having deja vu, and her eyes just went wide. How was it possible? We never met, never been to that spot, and we were both experiencing deja vu. The official definition of the phenomenon, according to Merriam-Webster, is a feeling of having already experienced the present situation. The feeling is fleeting, often comes up out of nowhere, and can leave you a little bit unsettled. There are some hair-raising stories which are often hard to explain, mainly because deja vu itself is hard to explain, as we've discussed.
That we did.
There are lots of theories about the phenomenon. Others think it's a sign of mental illness. Doctors and psychologists don't seem to have a straight answer either. Some researchers have said that deja vu is a way for your brain to know your memory checking system is working well. Carl Jung has referred to it as something immemorially, oh my goodness gracious, let's have another go, will we? Immemorially known.
You think you got it?
Oh, I don't know, Bob. Anyway, some people speculate that deja vu has to do with past lives or alien abduction. There, again, just doesn't seem to be any concrete answers.
So they say, whoever they are.
That's right, Bob. I heard an interesting take on deja vu recently. It was positioned that people who have goals and discipline and, say, model their desired success on someone they admire and apply discipline continually, then achievement of said goal is a sense of deja vu because a vision of how it will feel. This is as a part of the discipline. You've visualised how your goal would feel, taste, see and sound. When it happens, feels very much like deja vu.
That's really interesting.
I know, I think so too, Bob. Deja vu is believed to be caused by the way the brain processes images and thoughts. We can take in our surroundings visually a split second before we become consciously aware of where we are. That can lead us to believe we've been there before. It is also suggested that deja vu is more likely to happen to people with anxiety who are hyper aware of their surroundings, but also in a panic state can delay, but only by milliseconds, the time it takes the brain to process the surroundings consciously. It can also be the same experience with sound reaching the brain before conscious awareness kicks in. So you may think you knew what someone was going to say before they said it. It's often called a brain glitch. Also, premonitions and deja vu are two separate things. I've heard that a number of times, the idea of a brain glitch or even a parallel life. In dreams, people have reported a form of deja vu in a dream in the form of a premonition, and the details of the event can be eerily accurate. So dream-induced deja vu is quite common.
I sleep like the dead and rarely, if ever, remember my dreams, so that just knocks me out for that one.
Well, because it seems to be so random, that's why that can be quite shocking and interesting, the accuracy. But if you're not someone that can remember your dreams, that could make it a little bit challenging in that case. If you have a dream that has incredible detail, be sure to write it down, because it is confirmation when things unfold later in your life. It is true to say that deja vu can also, say in dreams, be very mundane, and still it's really interesting. Recently, however, new scientific information and evidence has come to light. There is a suggestion, that's right, Bob, that has researchers scratching their heads that intense forms of anxiety can trigger deja vu. These misfirings in the neurons in the brain being referred to as psychogenic deja vu, where the person's brain mimics the firings of psychogenic inducements. Researched by Dr. Anne Cleary, she is a professor of psychology at Colorado State University who studies human memory. She was told by a man who was going on a hunting trip, he was getting on the plane and he felt like he'd sat in that very seat on that very plane, and that the passengers on the plane surrounding him had been on that plane before. He even recognised the clothes that they were wearing as something as he'd seen previously. The flight attendant, he knew she was going to approach him, and he also knew what she was going to say. The situation bothered him so much, he found it so jarring that he started researching deja vu on the internet, and eventually found Dr. Anne Cleary's research and contacted her. So clearly, this has changed a lot of people's lives. It does, though, make me wonder.
Oh, here we go.
I wonder where you were. It does make me wonder, though, Bob, if there are people who experience it a lot, or have experienced it a lot, who are listening to this podcast today, because I would love to hear about it. I haven't deja vu'd for a while myself. Did you know that the opposite of deja vu is a phenomenon known as jamais vu? In French, jamais vu translates to never seen. It occurs when something that should be familiar suddenly feels strange or completely new. And I believe that I have experienced this. As if you've never encountered it before. Imagine walking into your childhood home as an adult, and despite its unchanged appearance, the living room feels utterly unfamiliar. It's like experiencing a familiar situation for the first time.
Wow.
I know. And while deja vu makes you feel like you've been there before, jamais vu does the opposite, leaving you momentarily disconnected from recognition and memory. There was an experiment, a study by Chris Moulin of Leeds University. He asked 92 volunteers to write out the word door, D-O-O-R, 30 times in 60 seconds. So in July 2006, at the 4th International Conference on Memory in Sydney, here in Australia, he reported that 68% of volunteers showed symptoms of jamais vu, such as beginning to doubt that door was a real word. Well, I remember going through something like that. I was at university, and I was writing it wasn't a thesis, it was something that didn't sound quite as important that. But anyway, I had to write this thing, and I was really, really tired, like I am now actually, interestingly. And do you think I could remember how to spell the word the? And I remember I'm in front of the laptop, and I'm mouthing the word the, visualising my tongue coming out the over, and I could not remember was completely unfamiliar. But anyway, Merlin believes that a familiar brain fatigue underlies some symptoms of schizophrenia and another delusion which is called Capgras delusion. Merlin suggests that people with these conditions could be suffering from chronic jamais vu. And when I think about my situation, it never did happen again, but I remember having that conscious moment where the word "the" had completely escaped me. Your feelings of déjà vu may be representative of a health issue if they're accompanied by other symptoms like headaches, confusion, loss of awareness, seizures, shaking or weakness. Like religion, maybe fashion trends, the latest thing, people will get behind anything that means something to them. That's how we can end up in groups, some of which can be toxic if we are not really vigilant and careful. We can all have different interests and beliefs. Some people will swear by déjà vu, for example, because there are things that cannot be explained away so easily, so readily.
I know.
I'm looking at the look on your face there, Bob. Others can sweep the whole phenomenon under the rug, mainly because they don't care to know one way or the other.
We can be influenced easily.
We can, correct, Bob. All the more reason to keep an eye out on our good selves. Hashtag deja vu and aging. When I was younger, most of us, of course, when we are younger, we cannot possibly have a good grassroots hold on life. We young little selves, we're lacking life experience. We're innocent, and because of that, we can believe something that makes no real sense, and often it's not until we're older that we question things that we perhaps haven't thought about in eons. Deja vu. Perfect example. My perspective is now, I don't care one way or the other, but I know what I have experienced, and it doesn't matter what it is or why or how. I simply know what I know happened. It is most definitely an age thing. I can't speak for anybody else, but getting older, as in my 60s, definitely has been my ticket for my inner peace. Is that how it is for you? It's a take it or leave it, don't care kind of thing. I also believe having a rebellious spirit, and I've always had a bit of that, but I don't take much sitting down. I may nod and agree, but I will always have my own take on it. I don't need for you to believe what I believe. We all know what we know.
That's so true.
It is, Bob. Because being in my 60s, I have a strong sense of justice after experiencing too much injustice and witnessing and seeing what goes on and is going on around the world. It has made my sense of honour stronger because I know how it feels to have your reputation sabotaged. And by people, as always, those that we cared about, trusted and helped. A strong perspective does escape a lot of people. Having a fiery, deep confidence, and was very fortunate to have had some really strong female mentors that only cemented my way of not worrying too much, if at all, what others think. Because after all, what others think of me is none of my business, and I am all for that.
Oh, yeah. Couldn't give a fig.
It's very liberating, I know that, Bob. I have told myself for a long time, we'll all die one day. And if I die now, will I die content? Will I have any regrets? And I can honestly say, I'll die just fine.
Thank you.
Having that mindset keeps me from getting my thought patterns mixed up in rubbish that has nothing to do with how I view my world. The world. One thing that has really helped me is getting to know myself. Leaning into that made me feel much more happy and competent. I like myself and I care a lot less about what others are thinking. When you decide to be a truly good friend to yourself, you don't have the same desires, do you? Time to give or requirements for others' approval. Who cares? Maybe it's not even approval. And some people really think that we want it. And they rattle on thinking that what they're saying is so important. And you just go, yes, that's right. Yes. Oh my gosh, beam me up, Scotty. Maybe it's when people you like never seem to ring you or text you, are really unreliable, and you thought you were great friends. When you have had a number of these experiences, it simply adds to the thing that so many of us feel now. Many people have simply given up on people. They are just way past the disappointment, or way past the abuse, the being taken for granted, the being just dropped, made to feel invisible. Honestly, they took themselves the trash out for you. Once you've done those rounds, you do wake up and you think, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct, Bob. This is especially why it makes sense to make sure sure you are number one in terms of your health and happiness. It's not being selfish, it's just mandatory. It's a fatal mistake to have someone be the reason that you are happy. So yes, whether you accept any of this as valid or true in your life, I cannot change that. But I cannot change what is coming up in my life either, except how I apply myself in my life. So you can bet I am choosing my own journey. Pop it.
That's right.
That's right, Bob. It's quite the journey to get to the place where you're happy for happy's sake.
Do I know happy?
No, it's just a saying. It's like you're just happy for the sake of being happy. It's a very liberating, very strong feeling.
Oh, it sounds nice.
It is, Bob. For all of it, I enjoy people, but I didn't get overly involved. I'm too busy painting my toenails, watering the garden, planning what's for lunch. That real earth-shattering stuff.
Sounds earth-shattering.
Can be, Bob. And, Bob, I think it is that time.
No, surely it's not.
Well, you know what, Bob? It is. And so I'd just like to thank everybody for coming by. It's always, always lovely to have you here. And, we'll see you next time. So say good day to the family for me and give the monarch butterfly a little flutter. And we'll see you next time, okay? All right. Bye.
Bye.